Just gonna skip over you. Got the seats here and everything. Okay, so we got Switch 2. We got it in the box that it came in. So as you can see, GameStop. And we got some orange juice with the Switch 2. That's pretty cool.
This is a Nintendo Switch 2. I have just gotten this wonderful, one-of-a-kind console, and it's an extremely good console. I would definitely recommend it if it's your first time getting a Switch 2. Before we get to that, the video you just saw was a video of me with the Switch, me getting it. Let me tell you context for that story. I was, actually not skip to this time if you don't want to hear me yap about how I got this thing. I had to wake up at 6 in the morning, so I had to go to GameStop. This wasn't on launch day, by the way. This is a normal day. So I went, there was like other people waiting there. So we went to there 6 in the morning, and we were just camping out for around 3 or 4 hours. I was waiting there with my family, of course. No, I met some friends. I met some people there. You know, they're very nice people. Nintendo fans are really nice people. You know, I know that, right? And yeah, we were just waiting, and eventually I went in and I got one. They had double the amount that said on the phone, so that really got me hyped up for nothing. And I finally got it. Let's talk about the screen, which is pretty nice and bright. With the Switch 1, you usually would be able to see you'll be able to see shit with that screen if you're recording it. But now you can see a lot of crap on this. If I turn it on, you can definitely see the home screen. Yeah, so it's much better than the last one, right? And let's do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison. First thing we're doing is comparing the boxes. Now, it is a bit more girthy. I mean, look at that girth on this one compared to this one. This Switch is a bit more girthy. Besides, the Switch one is obviously look more of a rectangle than this. It's more of a square, but not really a square, if you know what I mean. The Switch 1 is a bit more. The Switch 2, sorry, you can't really see it from that angle, but you can see that it's that's a bit taller. The Switch 1, not much taller, but it's a bit taller. And I do have my Switch 1 stuff in here. Just to let you guys know, that when you open this box, it's the same backup mechanism as the Switch 1. This is how it looks as soon as you open it. Now, I don't have the same opening thing as when you open Switch 1, so I'm just going to take this off. And this is how it looks on the bottom, and it looks around the same on the Switch 1. I mean, not the exact same, but it looks around the exact same. Like that. So it looks pretty similar. And that is a Switch 1 box. Now we have the Switch 1 and Switch 2, which actually have some features. If you have a Switch 1, if you're not going to sell it just yet, I would recommend selling it because you can do two things. You can do virtual game cards, which you can say you have a Switch 2 game that doesn't really work on a Switch. So you have a Switch 1 game that doesn't work on Switch 2 yet. YouTube. You can just transfer the Switch 2. You can just transfer the Switch 1 game to the original Switch 1, and then you can be able to play that game. Now, let's take a look at the Joy-Cons. What's more better? What's more satisfying? Definitely switch to Joy-Cons. Let's compare the left Joy-Cons. Okay, so here they are. The Switch 2 ones are a bit more bigger. The SR buttons are bigger compared to the originals. The joysticks are much more better. They're less grindy, if you know what I mean. Like, the Switch 1 is much more grindy, but the Switch 2 is not even grindy, even a little bit. Which, that's great. I feel like the Switch 2 has a bit more click to the sticks, and the release button is a bit more, I would say, easier to press, if you get what I mean, where you press it, and it also shows it's a bit more harder to press, like a more pressure, but the Switch 2, you just got to press a little bit. And the attaching is much more better on the Switch 2. Let's test out the right Joy-Cons. On the right Joy-Con, there's a new button called the C button. This is a game chat. Now, you do need to have Switch Online for this, but if you use it, I think it's on like March or April, it's free. You don't need a Switch, Nintendo Switch Online for this. I think it's like around like March, until like March or April sometime 2026, you won't need to use this. You don't need Nintendo Switch Online. So, there's that. And compared, basically the same thing as left Joy-Con. Same reasons. Buttons, I feel like the buttons are a bit more clickier or more responsive on this. I like clicker buttons. And this button, I feel like the Switch 1 goes a bit more deeper than the Switch 2 in my opinion. Same with this. Okay, so if you want buttons to go deeper, then the Switch 1 Joy-Cons are for you, which is good, because the Switch 1 Joy-Cons work with the Switch 2. And those are the Joy-Con comparisons. Let's do system performance comparisons. This is the screen difference. Basically, this is including the borders, by the way. I mean, not including the borders, excluding the borders. The screen is the same exact size as the entire system, excluding the borders, which means the entire screen is the same size. No borders. The entire screen is the same. Look. The entire screen is the exact same size. And the Switch, I think the Switch 2 borders are a lot more small than the Switch 1 borders. The Switch 1 borders are huge, in my opinion, and the Switch 2 borders are a lot more smaller. I like, me personally, we'll have the kickstand now. This kickstand, in my opinion, was probably the worst kickstand in electronics history. Okay? This thing snapped off. I could not find it ever again. And it only had like one thing to do. Only had like one station. This thing is much more stronger, and it has many different ways of like folding, which I really like that. I'm directing this to parents, by the way. Parents, if you're buying them a new system, again, if they're like under like 10, get them a Switch. But if they're over 10, get them a Switch too. But this is really good, because under 10 they have like more like, I don't know, like it's more smaller for your kids' hands. But like I'm 12 and this is really nice. Let's talk about the game card opening. I love the Switch 2 game card opening. I keep doing this over and over and over again. It's like the Switch 2 Joy-Cons. You can't really see it. Let me bring it more closer to the camera. Look at that. And this is the Switch 1. Not very satisfying. Let's talk about screen resolution. Obviously, the Switch 2 looks a lot better than the Switch 1. The Switch 2 has Switch 1 has 720. Switch 2 has 1080, which is much better. Switch 2 has HDR, which means the screen is a lot more bright, which means you can play in sunlight, finally, without having your eyes being blinded. And that's the screen. There is much more. There is a more durable fan. Those fan little lines. On my Switch 1, you can see the fan lines are completely gone. Those were easy plastic to break off. They were not. I was even trying to break off over time, but this, much better. There's also a second USB port, which means it's more easier to play in tabletop mode and handheld. You also charge it double the time. That was a joke. And now let's talk about accessories. Now, lucky me, I have both of the Switch 1 and Switch 2 grips here. These are, let me move this, hold up. These are the Switch 1 and Switch 2 grips. These grips are absolutely great. But me personally, I like the Switch One a bit more better. I like it better because it has more like on the front. You guys can see, since the Joy-Con slid in, they were much more better. But on the Switch 2, it's not as good, but there's not much this grip like over here in your hand. So what I do, most of the time actually, is I just do whatever the heck I want, and I just place it in here. And me personally, I like using the Switch 1 grip with my Switch 2 Joy-Cons. I actually prefer this over the Switch 2. Look at this. You're missing something over here for your hands. I know they can't put anything there because, well, it's magnetic now. But, you know, I prefer using this where you just... Me personally, I like that. I like that a lot more better. And now let's get to straps. I only have one strap, so I'm only going to review one strap per each. So if I go over here behind the camera, also, let me know if you like this camera view, because I really like how I set this up. Let me know if you like it. Just let me know. So these are the Switch 1 and Switch 2 holders, or you know what these are. I don't know what the name of it, but they keep your hands they keep the Joy-Con from flinging to your TV or to the screen or flinging everywhere, flinging to your grandma's face. I personally like the Switch 2 ones a lot more better because these had a locking mechanism, which is fine, but it was very finicky, and even when it was unlocked, it was hard to take off. So basically, these were buttons because, well, on Switch 1, you can now press them. You can press them now. But on the Switch 2, it's not necessary because the Switch 2 SLSR buttons are much more bigger. As you can see right here. Like that. Also, if you're just getting this now, you're probably confused. How do you put this on? Well, you put it on like this. You have to put it on where you put it on the bottom first and put it on. I was confused at the start too. Now there is a mouse mode on this, which is much more better because these little black things are good for like mouse mode, where it looks like a little mouse pad. I use this a lot for Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which I would not recommend because it's a really $10 game, really. If you're just getting a Switch 2 or you're thinking about getting one, I recommend getting Drag X Drive for your like tutorial game, because spending $10 for that isn't good. For like a Welcome Tour, not good. But I feel like Drag X Drive is better. Although it's $20, it's still much better. So yeah, that's the Drag X Drive for you. Now let's talk about the dock, which I will be right back because I gotta unplug my Switch 2 dock. Oh shit. I'll put my Switch 2 dock over here, so give me a couple seconds. This may or may not be my second time recording this, or maybe my third time, but Samsung decides, you know what, we're just gonna stop recording mid-through. Yeah. Now I'm back with the docks, although I recorded this 3 times, and I hope it records actually this time, and not be a forgetful the Dementia tablet. This is the Switch 1 dock. It has a bit ridgy edges. The holding like this, it hurts, but the Switch 2 doesn't really hurt. The Switch 2 is obviously much more bigger. And on the bottom there is a fan. There's a fan in the dock also, which makes it much more smoother for the gameplay. And I personally like taking the Switch 1 thing off because it's much more easier. The Switch 2, I mean, it's like a whole part you take it off. And you have to like, you need a tutorial to take this off. I'm not even doing a freaking tutorial. And you apparently need a tutorial to put this thing on too. You gotta put your fingers here, put your finger here, like in this thing, and then it takes off. But it's hard as heck to put on. There you go. It's glossy inside, which is nice. If you don't want to catch fingerprints, that's not nice. But in reality, if you want performance being more better, definitely a Switch 2. But this thing supports, if you have modern TV, this thing supports modern TV capabilities like 4K and much better FPS. Which, as you can tell us about the Switch 2 screen, it has 120 FPS, which makes it a lot more smoother. And that's about it for the docks. Let's move on to the cables, HDMI. Now, the Switch 1's cables, they feel just about, would you look at that? They look about the exact same thing. These cables look the exact same. You know what? I'm going to show you. Which one do you think is a Switch 2? If you said this one, you are incorrect. This is, I believe, the Switch 1. This is a Switch 2. But there is a difference with the HDMI cable. That's why I'm showing this. This one is ultra high speed, which means it's more like whatever the Switch 1 sees will go on the screen more faster. I think that's what it means. But that's that. It's not really that. There's not really that much difference with that. Now this has a lot more difference. This is the Switch 1 cable versus a Switch 2 cable. This looks like a Samsung charger. This is a actual Switch 2 cable. It says Nintendo right there, as you can see. Now, this is a lot more fatter, which I don't really like. It was a huge pain in the butt to put this in, because my cable was it was literally right next to my cable is literally right next to the TV stand. It's extremely hard to put in, but this one's a lot more easier. You just plug it in without having to risk your hand falling off. This one has a breakaway cable, which means that if someone steps on it, it will just break away like the Xbox. And instead of it being hardwired into the adapter's skull, the cable can go away and go back in for much more easier travel use. I like the Switch one's more girthier because I get to put stickers on it. You still get to put stickers on this, but it's like, you know what? Actually, it's a bit more easier to put on this now. So the AC adapter, I believe it delivers more watts, if I'm not mistaken. Output 5.0, and this one has an output of 5.0. So it's the exact same way, so 7.5 watts. Excuse me. And this has 15 watts. Okay, that's more better. So this one delivers more power, I believe. And that's basically the entire comparison. Let me show you a bit of Mario Kart. I'm thinking of putting a new video out for Mario Kart. So I got the Mario Kart World Bundle, which you usually get, because it makes a $80 game $50. So that's great. Even mainline Nintendo Switch 2 games, mainline Nintendo Switch games are usually $60. But you're paying basically $50 if you get the bundle. So let's show you a little bit of Mario Kart World, the new Mario Kart game. Then of course this video will end because there's really not that much I can do. I guess I can tell you a bit more about my story, but I'm not gonna do that right now. I'll probably put that in a short or something. So this is the Switch 2. And this is the brand new Mario Kart. Only a little bit of gameplay, okay? Because, well, I don't know much spoilers. Listen to that audio. I forgot to say, the audio is much more better on Switch 2. So this is basically the new Mario Kart. I'm going to do some online play. You have much more modes. Race, knockout, tour, battle. And I'm not going to do any of that because I'm making a new video. Plus, this is a Switch 2 review, not a Mario Kart review. So if you want to see that, like for a Mario Kart review video. And yeah, those are my thoughts on the Switch 2. So yeah. Random guy